The tentative title for my presentation and paper is The Last Mile, Bringing Khan Academy to the Unconnected. The reason for using that title is the last mile is a technology term that refers to the final leg of a network that delivers communications and connectivity to customers. So it's the part of the network that actually reaches into customers' homes or their places of business. The reason that applies to this paper is I'm going to be talking about a way that Khan Academy is reaching people who are not connected to the internet. And in my view, taking this approach with the Khan Academy learning platform will exceed the promise of the hole-in-the-wall computers that Sugata Mitra conceptualized. I wanted to provide some background knowledge on the Khan Academy. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the Khan Academy, if not all of you, but just some quick background knowledge on that to talk about why I feel like this is a much more effective approach to reaching and providing learning in those isolated areas. The mission of the Khan Academy, as stated on their website, is to change education for the better by providing a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. So you can see some similarities between that fundamental belief and the belief of Sugata Mitra with the hole-in-the-wall project. The Khan Academy was actually an accidental innovation. It wasn't conceptualized that this is the best way for students to learn, or even conceptualized that this is a way that we can bring high-quality learning throughout the world. It was accidentally innovated as the founder was, and in 2006 he created a YouTube site. Within a few years, that site reached over 450 million people viewing it, downloading or streaming those videos and getting that individualized tutorials that they needed to be successful. The Khan Academy has evolved a lot. It began, like I said, with a handful of video tutorials that he scripted for his cousins. It has now grown to literally thousands of videos. The content that he covers, again, it was started as a math tutorial, and so it's definitely heavy on the math side of content. The range that he covers in math goes from early math all the way through multivariable calculus. In addition to the math content, though, over the last few years he has added content for science, for economics, for computing, and even for art and humanities. So in addition to the video tutorials, it now includes assessments, interactive assessments that measure how well students are understanding the content that they're learning, and this now allows individual pacing for students, so they can watch a video or a series of videos. They can take the assessments and see whether they've truly mastered that content, and if so, they can progress to the next levels. Or if they haven't, they can go back and review those videos, and so it really becomes an individually paced approach to learning. And then in addition to the assessments, with those come reporting, and this is reporting that drills down from the classroom level for teachers that are using it in the classroom down to the student level, and at the student level down to actually specific skills, and so they can see the specific skills that they have mastered and the ones that they still need to work on. So it's really become a very robust and comprehensive learning platform. But what about the people who are not connected to the internet? And as you can see from this chart, which is a chart of world internet penetration by the percentage of population for each of these areas, the reality is that in industrialized and modernized countries, there's heavy penetration with the internet. And actually, I apologize, it doesn't looks like my graph cut off North America. North America is up in the 80%. And then you can see going down the chart the declining percentage of internet penetration, with Asia and Africa being the least connection. And the other interesting thing is to see where the world average falls, with only 39%, which means that in Asia and Africa, the size of the population that makes up that 31% and 21% is a huge proportion of the world's population, which basically goes to say that most of the world is still not connected to the internet.
Well, it turns out that yes, we're in the middle of an online learning revolution, but not everybody's being included. 2/3 of the world has no internet access, are not internet users. That's 4.5 billion people. So this network that we think of as completely ubiquitous is not reaching 2/3 of the world. And of the 1/3 that does have access, many of those are through low bandwidth or expensive bandwidth connections that don't allow them to engage with a lot of these sorts of resources. And it's even worse than that because it's not evenly distributed. The large majority of this connectivity is in affluent countries. In the poorer countries, 6% have internet access. And this is a problem because specifically those countries are the ones that could, in many ways, benefit most from these resources. They're the countries that have the fewest teachers, the fewest books, the fewest other educational resources. So the people that could perhaps most benefit from this online learning revolution are the ones who are least able to access it. And it's going to take generations, decades before, especially for those countries, those populations, connectivity actually does become ubiquitous. The day will come, but in the meantime, we're leaving generation after generation behind. And this is really important because it feeds into this spiral, the spiral of poverty, where a lack of education leads to lower standards of living, and then that leads further to less access to these resources. And so we're perpetuating this if we can't intervene and try and break that cycle. So that's why we made KA-Lite. This is an offline version of Khan Academy. So it's an offline website, which I'll look at in a minute. How is that even possible? So it's a platform for serving these over 4,000 videos that Khan Academy has in everything from math through art history. Includes dynamic aspects of the website like progress tracking, points, coach reports, so it can still empower the teachers that are using it. And it's designed to run on anything.
So that's a good introduction to the KA-Lite program, which essentially takes the Khan Academy learning platform and moves it offline through a server that students can connect to inside of their schools through different means. And by a server, it's not a high-end server like typically run in a school. This can run off of even the Raspberry Pi server, which is a $25 device that basically when you load the content onto an SD card or onto a flash drive, you can plug into it, and that can now function as a server. So for about $100, you can set up, and people have set up these servers that are delivering content inside of classrooms throughout the world. As far as how people get access to the actual learning platform and those videos, they're distributed through low-speed internet BitTorrent, SD card, and then through the SneakerNet. Means manually transported out to more rural areas and loaded onto a server or a computer to distribute that content inside of the school. This is a map of the current distributions of KA-Lite throughout the world. So these are a few pictures of different areas that are using the KA-Lite server. The bottom right corner is an orphanage in Cameroon, where above that is an implementation in Guatemala that I'll talk about more here on the next slide. And then the one on the left is in Cambodia. And these are just a handful of examples of very rural, disconnected areas that are using this content. So this is a video from an implementation in Guatemala, and you can see that how rural the area is. And this is a project from the Guatemalan government.
Emocionado, ¿verdad? Y contento porque el programa de FUNCEPA nos ha venido a facilitar mucho el trabajo, nos ha ayudado bastante, tanto en la motivación con los niños, así como también en el trabajo. Nos ha ayudado a que ellos analicen más. Ellos están con la ilusión de venir a trabajar, todos los días quieren trabajar con su tablet. Yo primero doy mi clase y luego ellos practican, a veces miramos videos, ¿verdad? Entonces ellos siempre se mantienen trabajando.
Me ha beneficiado bastante, ya que puedo integrar ambos grados.
So my paper will focus on contrasting the two connected learning models, the hole-in-the-wall project with the KA-Lite project. With the hole-in-the-wall, again, as I mentioned before, really premised on an unstructured informal learning environment, providing students access to the internet and essentially opening up wide open as far as the content there. And the results of that were, from what I read, increased fluency with computers and acquisition of some limited English vocabulary. On the other hand, with the KA-Lite, it takes a structured and scaffolded learning approach, again, providing specific content areas and layering basic skills, and then with more advanced skills on top of those, so students can sequentially progress through learning content. And the results from that has been increased math fluency and comprehension, as well as those other subject areas we talked about. So to wrap up, the thesis statement for my paper, as I conceive it now, is the structured pedagogy of the Khan Academy learning platform holds more promise to bring learning to disconnected populations than the informal approach of the hole-in-the-wall program. And so I look forward to your feedback and appreciate taking the time to watch the presentation.